Charlie Dimmock,
Boys!
the Rich Brothers, and the Garden Rescue team have a treat in store.
Too much entertainment.
They have come to the rescue of hundreds of British gardens. Now it's time to look back and pick their favourites.
This looks really cool. Fabulous.
As they celebrate the very best.
I don't like it. Huh? I love it.
From extraordinary eco-gardens
Thank you so much.
to exotic designs.
Oh my gosh, no way!
Gardens inspired by people
Is this the garden that you dreamed of?
It is.
Absolutely.
Well, I think that's a thumbs up.
and places.
It's the most beautiful garden I've ever been in.
Therapeutic spaces
Wow.
and the most extraordinary transformations.
It is perfect.
Welcome to Garden Rescue.
Top of the plots.
So, guys, what's going on today?
Well, if you boys can bear it, I'm going to choose my favourite gardens today, and there's been many, many of them.
Well, we tend to brag about quality, not the quantity.
No, keep calm, keep calm. I have actually chosen a couple of yours that I really
thank you.
loved
That's
as
very
well.
kind.
Needless to say, there is a pond in the mix. The first one we're going to look at is the one that we did, and it was really, really tiny, but we got so much in it.
Is that maybe Manjinder in Rutland?
Yes, top points, 8 star.
Good guess.
A lot going on.
Every garden rescue is something to be proud of, but our first Charlie's favourite transformation was for Manjinder, who hadn't paid her somewhat petite garden any attention for a long time.
My family come over quite regularly, especially my two nephews who are 5 and 3. And so therefore we want to try and create a space that we can all enjoy.
Although a tight space, Charlie's winning design managed to cram in a number of features to create the perfect cottage garden, including raised beds and a shed.
So for me, it's colour, cottage and education for your nephews.
The team get to work by first ripping up the existing turf with the turf cutter. Meanwhile, out at the front, Lee is making a start on the raised beds by sawing up old scaffolding boards. These can be picked up from reclamation yards nationwide.
Going in, mate, it's going in.
Will it fit?
Will it fit?
Of course it'll fit.
One bed done, only 3 more to go. Before long, the turf is up, and after a quick once-over with the vibrating plate, the slabs can go down. Once the patio is laid, the team can crack on with the other features.
Oh, this is looking really good. Exactly what I wanted. Yet over there, boys, with the slabs.
Yes,
Oh, I
Mum.
love being the boss.
Oh, it's ready for it, is it?
This patio area is looking great. I mean, Manjinder literally had about 5, 6 slabs outside the back door, but I wanted to give her a big seating area, but I didn't want it to look too uniform, so we've mixed up paving to give that higgledy-piggledy feel. And then we've just got these raised beds, and I actually quite like that distressed look with the bits of spray paint, the reinforcing on them, sort of looks quite quirky.
In her design, Charlie left a space for a small garden shed.
And it's going to be made out of pallets.
Lee's upcycling some pallets that Manjinder already had in the garden. You'd never know, though, the timber looks as good as new.
This is looking really good, Lee. Because we're going to have a green roof on this as well. So we're going to put a bit of timber, a bit of soil with some perlite in so it's not too heavy, and then plant some sedums and some sempervirens and succulents so it'll actually look quite pretty.
Before long, it's ready to be put in position.
Yeah,
down there. That's pretty much plumb on the back of this.
That's cool, isn't
Look
it?
at that.
Looks like a little cabin, doesn't it?
I know, and what's the great thing is because this paving's up, when you boys
Yeah.
plant that green roof up on there, you'll be able to see it. It'll look really nice.
Yeah.
Lovely.
High up on Manjinda's wish list was something to appeal to her nephews. Fruit trees can be a great way to pique a youngster's interest in the garden.
This is a cherry. It's a sweet cherry, so cherries fall into two different groups. You've got the acid cherries, which are the ones that you cook and make cherry pie with. Ooh, yummy, yummy. And then you've got your sweet cherries, are the ones that you eat raw. And I'm also going to train it as a fan.
Just in time to water seed them.
Charlie's idea for a green roof on the shed will give Manjinda yet another planting opportunity, this time a high-rise one.
Lee's made this lovely shed with this tray on top as well, which means that we can plant up a sedum roof. And with that, we've added a bit of membrane on the bottom, which is going to stop the wood from rotting. And then we've got this drainage layer here of gravel. And then all we're going to do then is add some soil on top and then put the plants in.
So we've got a lovely little mix of sedums and sempervivans of house leeks here. So we're going to put a nice little arrangement of all of these three on here. And these little guys, so like this one here, a nice little trick. Look for the ones in the nursery that have all the little babies in them, because actually this is just one plant here. So what you could do with these is you can just pick them off like that and then plant that on your roof there and it'll grow into one of these big rosettes. So actually you're getting loads of plants for your money. So that's a neat little trick. How are you going to arrange them? I can't really do it from up here.
I'll do it, Dave.
I'll have to leave you
I'll
with
have
that.
the fun bit.
In their natural habitat, alpine plants like this are well used to barren and exposed conditions with low levels of soil, so they work well in a roof garden.
That looks really good from here.
Finishes it off nice, doesn't it?
It does, it does.
We're planting little babies now.
Oh,
We'll be up here
you
for
would-
hours.
There is a lot more else to do, so, you know, you don't need to be there for hours.
Wow, I don't know about
We will.
So I've used these canes to make a fan shape radiating from the base, and then it's a case of taking the branches and tying them on like that. And then that one's going to go up there like that. Get the idea? It's a bit fiddly, but definitely worth it.
With just a few finishing touches left to do, the team are done. Manjinda's dull and uninspiring backyard has been transformed into a space full of character that both her and her nephews can enjoy. But will she like it?
Do you want to open your eyes?
Well, it's amazing. Thank you. You've created an amazingly magical space.
I'm sure that'll be a much-loved cottage garden with lots of use from Manjinda and her nephews. It was quite a formal cottage garden, a sort of knot garden effect. This planting here is much more natural cottage planting with lots of things self-seeding. So the aqualegias have self-seeded. Foxgloves are great because they will dot themselves around the border. And if you're going for a cottage feel, mix up the colours so that there's lots of different colours in the gardens. We've got pinks and blues and purples and whites and a lovely scabious. And that will give you the cottagey effect that you're looking for. So don't try and be too neat and tidy. Just plant them close together and pop them in. And don't be overzealous with your weeding in the spring. Get to recognise seedlings of the self-seeders like the aqualegia and the foxgloves. Now, my next favourite might surprise you. It was a crazy transformation for Ollie, who was bike mad, and his mum and dad.
Charlie's next favourite top-of-the-plots transformation saw Sally and her family's average garden in Appleton given a thrilling makeover for their cycle-crazy son, Ollie. Charlie's design featured a racetrack circling the garden, packed with weird and wonderful features.
The idea is to give different textures on this pathway. We've got this sort of bank of timber around there, so there's a slight curve to it.
Right.
And then I did think it would be quite fun that he can, if he wants, zoom in to Mum and Dad's bit, and we'll have a different type of paving there, so it's sort of rumbles, so maybe cobbles.
Okay.
Oh, there we go.
The team get to work on this mammoth transformation, but the first job for Charlie is to create a bike rumble strip through the new patio.
So what is this stuff?
3mm limestone, crushed limestone.
So no cement in it?
No cement in it. It's just it's normally the way you'd lay block paving.
Oh, of course, and then you put sand in on the top?
Yeah. So we
Right.
just lay that out, screed it out. We drop the bricks in.
Like so?
We tap them into place.
And tap
Normally you'd run a whacker plate over it and they'll all just squash into place.
Right.
Then you put like a kiln dried sand on top and it will sort of interlocks them all and traps them all in.
So even I think I could do that bit.
You could do this easy,
Yeah?
Charlie, no problem.
All right, I'll do that bit.
There you go.
And she's not the only one having fun with the track.
Now we're actually creating the start and the finish line of the racing track. Now obviously that would be defined by the checkerboard pattern, but that would stand out a little bit too obvious in a garden. So Charlie had a lovely idea of using these cobbled sets. Now this one here is a dark limestone, and this one here is a light granite. And I think they're going to add a nice little element to the racing track.
I actually think this looks really cool. It looks like a tyre track to me.
With the final pieces of the track slotting into place,
Well done, these are looking pretty good. Pretty fun as well.
Yeah, I agree.
the brothers have also made something to turbocharge the racetrack, some chevrons. But will the boss be impressed?
Hey!
They look great. I mean, they look like they'd be really complicated.
No, it's just
What
like...
do you mean? They were. You underestimate. We made it look simple.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. You're the two right people for that.
Right, turn it the right way and ride them out.
Onwards and upwards.
Another feature that was key to Charlie's bike theme was a rather unique archway.
So this is a bit of fun. Using a bit of rebar. It's cheap and cheerful, so if that one goes in there, not too wide. And then we've got these wheels that we got from the reclamation centre, free of charge, because Oliver likes his wheels in whatever form. I have to say they were into a great big knot. Oh, there you go. And going to be great for climbers. So we're going to attach those on up here. Maybe a bit of this mesh as well. But when Oliver's shooting through on his scooter, he'll know that it's wheels everywhere.
Although the racetrack is taking centre stage, the garden also has to please Ollie's parents, so the team disguise it with shrubs and plants.
I've got a rather lovely shrub here. It's a hibiscus syriacus. That's the species of hibiscus that are hardy in the UK. My idea was that, you know, when Sally and Ian are sat here, they don't really see the scooter track. All they see are lots of really pretty plants. And from there, they are just surrounded with colour and scent from the jasmine and honeysuckle.
There's a race across the finish line, and with some final planting, the garden is done. Before, it was a dull, flat space, with little fun to be had for either children or adults. Charlie's design combined an exhilarating racetrack and a tranquil space for the parents. Time to see if it pleases all the family.
You can open your eyes. So 1, 2, 3.
Wow!
Look at
How amazing is that? That is fabulous, isn't it? Wow!
But it's the racetrack that really wins the day.
Very cool garden, that, Charlie. Absolutely loved it.
Yeah, I think you two secretly wanted to stay there and play,
Oh,
didn't
yeah,
you?
it's no secret.
Now, my next favourite garden is actually one of yours, boys.
Ooh, which one?
Do you remember Bernard and Cecilia?
Yes.
Of course.
Wanted a Maltese garden, but with lots of homegrown veg
Yep.
and a Mediterranean vibe.
Yeah, loved that one actually. Really cool design. Definitely Mediterranean, but it was quite contemporary. And then a little bit of country garden, English country gardens thrown in for good measure.
Since moving to their house, Bernard and Cecilia hadn't done anything to their garden, but they dreamt of growing their own produce. So the Rich Brothers' incredible design featured raised vegetable beds, a dry stone wall, and an orchard.
So we've got these small dwarf apple trees,
Okay.
and they're going to create a lovely kind of gridded orchard where we've located a nice little seating space amongst it.
If you're hungry.
And if you're hungry, just lift up, pick one out, have a bite.
There it is, look. Big one.
First job for the landscaping team is removing the old decking,
Right, should we get all hands on deck?
which they carefully do so they can reuse the wood for the vegetable raised beds.
Right, get the digger in.
While Kyle clears the patio area and Chris makes a start clearing up the old grass, out the front, the Rich Brothers and Charlie have arrived.
Look, and we've got the Maltese weather.
And around the back of the house, the boys are delighted by how much has been achieved.
So the guys have been working super hard, made a dramatic difference to the garden already. One of the big differences is down here, brand new patio. So this patio then leads on to one of the main features in the garden, and that's this angled pathway.
And I've got to say, this is one of my favourite parts of the garden. It's this lovely stone wall that's going to define these two sections of the garden. And it's a lovely texture, and it really has a little nod to Malta. And it's lovely to see that they've already got produce in this garden. This greenhouse is just packed full of tomatoes, a bit of a bumper crop. You see Charlie's already in there, making
Come and
good.
smell this, come and smell this.
Oh, go on then,
This takes me back to working in a commercial, the smell of tomatoes.
That's lovely, isn't it?
Pinching them out.
Yeah.
Oh, God, it smells fantastic. They've got loads of stuff in it,
I
lots
know.
of different varieties.
Lovely to see, isn't it?
Harry's first task is building the dry stone walls.
And these walls are very evocative of the landscape in Malta. Now, I'm building this wall in quite a traditional manner. I'm not using any cement. Rather, I'm using scalpins, which fills the void, and then I'm using tie stones as well, which help to link all the wall together. Now, the way that these have been cropped makes them very easy to build, because it's almost like a brick, in the way that I'm just making sure I cross the joints with the next one. They're just building up, and that's what's so lovely about this, is that it's kind of supported by friction and gravity. It's a really enjoyable way of building a wall, and it's very different to the way I normally do it back in Wales. But I think it's got a lovely simplicity about it and a lovely geometric shape to it.
Ready
That's the job.
for me
Ready for you.
to plant up with
I
the
know.
herbs.
Yes, I
Come
know.
on, come on.
I'll leave you gaps. How about
You-
that?
OK, all right then. And is it easier building with them than...
Oh, look at it.
It's
I
just
mean,
like
if
stickle
I can't
bricks.
build a wall with it, I may as well not bother.
Well, I can't wait to plant it up.
Yeah.
While all the bound gravel surfaces go down, Charlie's finally got her chance to plant up the top of the finished dry stone wall.
And now the herbs for this lovely dry stone wall. I mean, when you go on holiday, whether it's Spain, Portugal, or even Malta, I'm sure we've all got memories of wandering around and getting this really strong aromatic scent, and it's going to be in full sun. Now we've got the lemon verbena, which is yummy. Now it's going to get quite big, so it'll fill this space, which will make this a bit more intimate around here. But also, Harry and David are putting in a lot of herbs like thyme, which is great because it will sort of trail over the edges, but also they're making this into a seat. So it's going to be part partition, part seat. And of course, when you then sit on this, thyme will take being trodden on or sat on, and they can use it for cooking, and it's fantastic for bees.
Meanwhile, David makes a start on the all-important raised vegetable beds.
So it's just really simple construction with these veg beds. So we're just screwing the deck boards in at the corners, and then to brace them, to keep them square and keep it strong, we're putting in some of this 2x2 timber here as well. So we've got one layer, we're going to be raising it to 2 layers, so nice and high. And it's really this simple, and again, it's just about adding that nice bit of produce into the garden, but really defining this as a traditional working garden with a lovely modern twist around the outside of it.
The team are progressing well, and Harry is planting the orchard and entertainment area with apple and pear trees.
Now, these fruit trees will add a gorgeous romance to this part of the garden, and that's what we wanted to create, a lovely kind of atmosphere of this old English garden. They've got a lovely blossom, but they also don't grow too large. Now, these are dwarf rootstocks, so they're not going to grow much larger than 2 metres, which means we're still going to retain a lot of the sunshine in this back area. I'm going to plant quite a few of them.
The garden is nearly done, and there's a frantic push to finish the planting. What was an unloved waste ground has been transformed. The unproductive and unappealing outdoor space now fuses English country garden with a Maltese touch. But most importantly, it'll deliver plenty of fruit and veg. Time to show Bernard and Cecilia.
3, 2, 1, open your eyes.
Oh, wow. This looks good, yeah.
Yeah, good.
Well done.
Really elegant garden. I love that one, and so practical. Loads of veg, places to sit. Fantastic.
Oh, thank you, Charlie. Well, yeah, it was a lovely garden. Hopefully they've got tons of vegetables growing in it this year.
Gardens being practical, that is one of the big themes. Now, the next one, do you remember Burton-on-Trent?
Ooh, what's that one?
Chris and Naomi, the garden that was on a big, steep slope.
Oh, yeah.
And she'd been in an accident, so it had to be accessible.
Very complex, though, if I remember rightly.
Yes. It is amazing that you can just draw a line.
Yeah.
Oh, and then you've got to build it.
The only things enjoying Naomi and Chris's garden were the chickens. So Charlie's winning design broke the space up into different zones to suit the whole family. And it featured a gentle paved slope so Naomi could easily access it.
This section here is the sunken garden, the lower section. And I'm thinking that lends itself to the chickens.
The landscaping team get to work quickly. First, building a retaining wall at the bottom of the garden so it can be levelled.
We're going to bring all the soil from this side of the garden down into that corner. That'll give a nice, square, level lawn area down here.
Wall's in place, and it's time for Steve to do some serious earth moving. And with the ground finally levelled, the landscaping team crack on, building the paved patio and the all-important gentle slope to give Naomi access to the lower section of the garden. Meanwhile, the brothers have been tasked with building a hanging box to grow salad in that can be raised out of reach of those hungry hens.
It's going to be a little bit of fun, and it's going to spruce up a little area in the back of the garden for the chickens and for Naomi.
Right, should we crack on?
Yes.
The salad box will be suspended from a wooden scaffold, and the brothers have already sawed the timbers to length. All that remains is to screw the 2 bits together.
Ooh, nice. When creating a structure like this, it's key to use bolt screws rather than ordinary screws, because you're going to be able to get it a lot deeper into the wood. It's going to hold it a lot stronger, and especially with a structure like this, it's going to hold a bit of weight.
But it isn't long before the boss comes to check on their progress.
It's going to be a pot or a basket on the end of it that we're going to make.
Right.
And then we're going to have some edibles in it.
Okay, like
Some
cut and come
salads.
again salad stuff.
Yes, exactly. So when it's up here,
It'll be out of the chicken's way.
Yeah.
Okay.
2 bitter.
Then drop it down. Chickens
The
can come
chickens.
have a... Okay. You can always hang some flags on it.
Happy with the brothers' rather inventive design, Charlie takes herself off to the front garden for some peaceful crafting of her own. She's got an idea for some rather unusual recycled planters.
So I'm going to use these jam jars, and of course you can't drill a jam jar, so what we're going to do is put a big layer of gravel in the bottom. That way, when you put the water in, you'll be able to see the water, and then when the plant uses all the water up, you can see that it needs watering. So a big layer of water, a bit of potting compost. I'm going to use these sempervivums here. And the great thing about these succulents is they really don't need much in the way of compost because they're alpines, so they'd naturally be growing in crevices between rocks which have very little soil and get very limited water. There we go, see? There you go, so that looks quite cute. And then I'm going to attach them to a piece of board that I've saved from the skip and then use these Jubilee clips to hold them to the board. And then I've got these little jam jars that I'm going to pop in some night lights.
In the back garden, Lee's been cracking on building a timber pergola.
Right, this is it, crowning glory. Only starting.
Whilst the brothers have nearly finished their raised salad box.
The moment of truth, no. Right, hoist the flag, Captain. Turning my sailor's knots. There we are.
The chickens will be happy, as is Charlie, because she's starting her favourite part of any garden, the planting.
I love these cornuscusas.
They are, I mean...
They get these beautiful white bracts on them, which look like leaves, but they're white and they have a little tint of pink, and it just gets covered with them. And this one's been grown as a multi-stem shrub, so it'll fill that whole space. Make that seating area nice and quiet.
With the planting done and the final touches added, the garden is finished. What was an awkward, unloved space has been cleverly divided into different zones for all the family. And it now has easy access for Naomi. But what will she and Chris think?
OK, you're allowed to open your eyes.
Oh my word! Look at that! I can get down there and... oh, wow.
That garden was definitely an engineering marvel, but great to know that Naomi can actually use the garden properly now.
Yeah, I wonder if the chickens like their veg box.
They went.
I thought it just gone mad.
That directly translates as, we love it. Thank you, Harry.
So we're looking at my favourite gardens over the years, but what about my favourite plant? Impossible to choose, but I have to say, roses are up there. They're lovely plants. You get colour, scent, and they go from ground cover plants to rambling roses that will cover a tree. Now, they're quite hardy, but there's certain things that they do really like. They do like to be fed regularly. They're quite hungry roses, and you need to do that probably twice a year, in the spring, about March, and then after the first flush of flowers. Use a rose feed, so it's just a case of sprinkling it around the base of the plant. Now, roses are deep-rooted plants, so they can normally find water, but if you're establishing them, then you will need to water them, or if you get a dry patch in the summer, it's definitely worth watering them. So give them a good soak rather than sort of lots of light waterings. And after you've finished watering, it's definitely worth mulching around the base of the plant. I'm using well-rotted compost here. Keep it about 4 inches away from the base of the plant, so the mulch traps moisture in and also helps to suppress weeds. The other thing to remember, deadhead regularly. It'll keep those glorious flowers coming back. Now, my next favourite garden is in West Sussex, and it was for Claire and Paul, and guess what? The main feature was a pond.
Paul and Claire wanted a wildlife haven for the family to enjoy, and Charlie's design ticked all the boxes. It was hedgehog friendly, had bird and bat boxes, a bug hotel arbour, and of course, a giant pond.
Water is a must for wildlife, and by having an actual pond rather than just a water feature, you'll be able to get frogs and newts in there. There'll be shallow areas so the birds can bathe in it. Bring your swimming trunks.
With so much to do, the landscaping team crack on with the groundwork. With the turf up and the pond underway, Seb and Scott can crack on with Charlie's walkway and pergola.
So the pond's all dug out. I've gone for an irregular shape because it's a wildlife pond. You could go for a formal shape in a garden sort of near the house, but irregular will look nicer in this garden. So egg shape, we've got lots of different depths. So 2 foot in the centre so it doesn't freeze up and it gives the wildlife somewhere to hibernate. Then we've got a shelf all the way around the edge. That's about 10 inches deep. But then what we have got on a wildlife pond, it's quite key, is to have this sloping edge so that any wildlife that gets into the pond can easily get back out. Hope it's big enough.
It's too long.
It's all right. Better to have a liner bigger than you need than smaller than you need. Time to fill the pond up. It'll take a while.
But it's not just pond life that will get a new home. The boys are also installing some bird boxes.
It's important when you site your bird box to put it as high up the tree or high up the building as possible, because that means it's out of the way from predators. Nice, that's the bird box in.
Harry's also made a bat box from some timber.
It's a very similar concept, really, but it's all fixed, and the only thing here for them to enter is this little 10 to 15 millimetre gap.
While David and Harry hang the bat box, Charlie starts on her marginal plants for the pond.
The marginals are the ones that sit in the shallow water that's like 4 to 10 inches deep. And they are really important in a wildlife pond because the wildlife, things like dragonfly nymphs and damselfly nymphs, need the plants that stick out of the water so that once they've grown big enough, the nymphs, they actually crawl out onto the leaf and then split open and turn into the dragonflies and damselflies. One of my favourites is kingcup, flowers really early in the spring, the first thing really to flower in a pond. And then lythrum, which gets these tall spires of purple flowers. Lovely.
Another key job is to make the garden hedgehog friendly, which Charlie's on to next.
The biggest problem for hedgehogs are fences, wooden fences like this, because they can't get into the garden. And we really need to help our hedgehogs out, because back in the 50s, there was about 35 million hedgehogs, and now we're probably lucky if there's 1 million. So I'm going to dig these gullyways, which will be little entrance and exits all round the garden, so that the hedgehogs can go from one garden to the next, because they don't just live in one spot. They go round looking for food, and I'm planting a selection of natives, so things like hawthorn, yew and hornbeam, which they naturally encounter in the wild. But also I'm going to plant pyracantha because they apparently love the berries. So it's got white flowers in the spring, which is great for the bees, but then in the autumn you get the berries on them, which they'll eat. And if you do hear a sort of snuffling, snorting sound at night, that will probably be the hedgehogs looking for food.
With the arbour frame built, it's time for the brothers to make it bug-friendly.
Now, this arbour is a key feature in Charlie's design, and not only is it going to be a great spot to sit and enjoy the garden from, but it's going to be a little home for wildlife and invertebrates. And the guys have done a great job putting together the structure, and we're just adding the shelves. So what we've done is we've screwed in these shelving supports and then cut to size and slotted in the shelves, and on there's going to be the log pile, and logs are a perfect thing to use for this, aren't they?
They are. By introducing more wood into the garden, you're actually inviting more invertebrates as well. And they're the bottom of the food chain, so in turn, they're going to attract all that wildlife into the garden.
There we are, check that out, done.
I think it looks really nice, doesn't it?
Yeah, very happy.
It's the final push, and the garden is a hive of activity as the team finishes the planting. And the old, uninspiring space has been transformed by Charlie's design, creating a magnificent wildlife haven. But what will Naomi and Chris think?
You can open your eyes.
Oh my goodness.
It's a little bit different to what it was like before.
I can't believe it. It's completely, it's amazing.
Oh, wow.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Well,
Oh,
that's good.
Absolutely brilliant.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Sometimes in the garden, you need to keep those critters at bay. Now, I'm going to be planting these cabbages out, but Charlie's given me some wonderful netting, which is going to help to keep away the flies and all the bugs away from these beautiful plants. And I'm going to do this simply by using these bamboo canes. And they're going to go around the cabbages in a line. And then I'm going to use the netting, put it over the top. But I'm not actually going to pierce it to tie it on. I'm actually going to weigh it down with some rocks or some old bits of tiles found around the garden. Well, I'm not sure this is the exact colour of netting that I would have used, but Charlie does tend to like the colourful things in life. So I'm just going to rest that over the top. By simply using some tiles or some bricks or some stone just to weigh the netting down, it means that no holes develop. Therefore, you're stopping anything from getting inside. It's a wonderful way of doing it, and if you need to extend it, it's very easy. You just allow a little bit more netting to unravel. Now, this reminds me of the garden we did for Emma and Steve in Hoveringham, and Charlie created an absolute bomb-proof raised veg patch using just this netting.
Charlie's final top of the plot's favourite garden was for Emma and Steve. Although their garden had a picture-perfect view, there was one big problem.
If we put deck chairs or anything out here, we're right amongst walking land here. You can walk all along the river, so people stop at the end of the garden and just stare in at you.
So the Rich Brothers design focused on solving the privacy problem by creating a sunken seating area. But it also incorporated a vegetable patch and an old boat the couple wanted featured.
We wanted to put a nice little bench in, possibly the one you're sitting on right now, and then have the front of the boat sticking out from the bench so you guys could sit down in your little boat, look at the view, and have some fun, hopefully.
Yeah, absolutely.
With their work cut out creating a sunken patio, the team clear the garden so they can bring in the digger. Before he can start digging, Andy needs to clear the area of the weeds that have colonised the whole of Emma and Steve's garden.
Come on.
But it's not just the weeds that are coming out. Some of the plants are for the chop too. With a clearly defined area to work with, Lee and Steve can lay the sleepers that will make up the retaining walls of the sunken seating area.
If it's bang on,
It's bang on.
that'll do.
Next, the sleepers are fixed into place. The sunken decking is almost complete, which is just as well as the bosses have arrived.
Now, the garden is coming along beautifully. We've made a massive impact already. And one of the main parts of this garden is this sunken space here. It's gorgeous. And the whole idea of it is that Emma and Steve can walk out of their house and they can walk into this lovely private sunken space.
And also, it's lovely because it makes a great seat, and that's why we've kind of integrated it in with the rest of the garden, because when you drop down, you actually get rid of that view of the road, and it really does accentuate the river and the fields and trees beyond.
Whilst the boys take in the view, Charlie's working hard moving the vegetable bed into position.
Let's square up with that.
Then it's time for Andy to break out his trusty digger again to fill it. And Carpenter Lee is constructing a critter-proof frame.
Emma and Steve had in the past tried growing veg, but they weren't overly successful. So I'm hoping to give them a bit of a boost by making it free as far as possible of pests and disease. So by putting a nice frame on the raised bed, mesh, with this mesh, the flies, it's so fine, the flies can't get through.
And while Charlie tackles the bugs, the brothers are ready to do some planting around the sunken deck.
Now this shrub here is Griselinia, and the reason we've chosen it for this garden, not only for its natural, simple leaf, but actually because it grows up to be quite shrubby, quite bushy, and situated around the seating area, it's really going to help to stop those winds. And also you can see here, it's got this quite delicate, almost inconspicuous flower. It's evergreen, and that's really important because that means even in winter, it's going to help protect the garden from the wind.
Charlie has asked Lee to cut some lengths of copper piping because she's taking no chances when it comes to critter-proofing the veg bed.
This is to stop those pesky slugs and snails. You might have seen it on pots where you stick tape on, but this is the maxed out version of it. Permanent copper pipe, which just got all the way round the container. And basically what happens is the slugs and snails don't like crawling over copper.
At the end of the garden, the boys are getting nautical with the boat.
Now what we're going to do is we're going to have a bench situated here at the end of the path. So when they're sitting down, they can look over the front of the boat and then out onto the view. But what we'd like to do, just to add it and maybe kind of unify it into the garden a little bit more, is we'd like to build a little bespoke table in here. So when they're sitting down, they can use the table and then they can look at this beautifully crafted boat.
There's a few final jobs to finish things off to the brothers' satisfaction.
What do you think is going here, Harry?
Oh, I like it.
Yeah?
Yeah, lovely.
A little feature at the end of the path.
Perfect.
Lovely.
And with that, the garden's finished. What was an unloved, unused space has been transformed into a beautiful private garden with a centerpiece sunken deck. But will it float Emma and Steve's boat?
Oh, my goodness.
That's incredible.
Oh, wow.
It's huge.
Yeah, nice.
How did you extend the garden by that length?
There's no road now. Go all the way across.
Absolutely unbelievable.
That garden has to be one of the more perfect spots with a perfect garden to fit the spot, boys.
Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it was a lovely garden because it had a split level, and it's nice to be able to play around with that because you can create different spaces.
Yeah, really create a cosy atmosphere, hunkered down from the wind and the roadside.
And unusually for you two, a theme.
I know.
Many talents, see? Well, we do hope you enjoyed a look back at some of Charlie's favourite gardens.
We'll see you next time for some more Top of the Plots.